Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first in a series of 5 honest conversations about race and how we can all move forward together. I'm Jeannie Johnson. I'm the founder of Ridgewood Walks and Ridgewood Talks. Ridgewood Walks provides free guided themed walking tours of Ridgewood, and the podcast Ridgewood Talks is where we interview the leaders and legends of our village and where we dig into the town's hot topics. We also provide community forums to discuss current events that affect the health and well-being of our community. And the purpose of these initiatives is to create a more connected and vibrant community. The forum that we have for this evening and for the next 4 Mondays is something that should have taken place long ago. The worldwide grieving over yet another Black man being murdered by a law enforcement officer has literally brought our country to its knees. And it would be irresponsible not to have an open and honest discussion about race and what it's like to live in this country as a Black American. I'm grateful for my friend Mack because I called him up last week and I just didn't know what to do or what to say. And I wanted and needed his guidance on how I should direct my energies and to make the biggest impact that I can. I told him that I think the protests and the prayer vigils are meaningful, but when they're done, then what? We need to keep our foot on the gas if we're really meant to make change. Mack made a simple request, and that was to just listen and learn. So that's what we're inviting you to do too. We're asking you that you become a generous listener so that you can ask better questions. And generous listening is powered by curiosity. It involves a kind of vulnerability and a willingness to be surprised and to let go of assumptions and take in ambiguity. A good listener should want to understand the humanity behind the words of the other and patiently summon one's best self to offer compassion and validation and love. So, to be clear, this series is not about politics or religion. It's about humanity. There are no parties or cliques. It's just people listening and finding their better angels so that we can empathize and take action to help us all move forward in a direction that we could be proud of. Reverend Sarah Lindsay from the Unitarian Society is our tech wizard tonight, and I'm so grateful for her. She's been a huge support of this initiative, and so without her, none of this could even happen. So I'm going to give you a few housekeeping items. You're going to remain on mute for the entire 1-hour session, but you're encouraged to ask questions via the chat option found on the bottom of your screen. So please be kind and respectful with those questions. And if you'd like to hang in there for a few extra minutes after the formal session is closed, we're going to continue on. So please note also that these conversations will be formatted for our Ridgewood Talks podcast, and they can be found on iTunes or SoundCloud. And so for the next 3 weeks, Mack is going to share conversations with Mark Oler from Westside Presbyterian Church on June 15th, and Arturo Lewis from Hope Emmanuel on June 22nd. And Sarah Lindsay, again, from the Unitarian Society, will be on June 29th. And on the final week of the series on July 6th, Mack is going to tie this all together, and he's going to give us some more actionable items to use going forward. So, Sarah, I'm going to let you take it from here. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, the Reverend Mack Brandon. Mack, as you know, is the pastor of the Metropolitan AME Zion Church in Ridgewood. He came in 1984 to serve as the music minister. He is also a professor on the faculty of Ramapo College of New Jersey and is indeed a musician of the first order. It is always a pleasure for me to be with Mack, to talk with him, and I am so delighted to be introducing to you tonight. So Mack, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Sarah, and I appreciate it, Jean. In both of your introductions, I feel like running out the house and closing the door, letting someone else speak because they were so wonderful. Thank you so much. One of the things that Jean said that I thought I wanted to follow up on was that I did say we just have to listen, but I also meant myself. I guess it was about a year and a half ago when there was yet another killing. There were killings, and there was any number of civil events that seemed to not be addressed by the heart. What I mean by that is that many times in our village, we're really quite good at responding. We respond to say that we disapprove of man's inhumanity to man, if you will. But there's something deeper and something deeper in which we have to grapple with, and that is our heart. And so I decided to just kind of go into meditation, to not say too much, to just listen. I wanted to hear voices, and I wanted to see if people were looking at the heart of the matter. Now, I've been speaking sort of superfluously, talking about civil events. But when you dig down into series of events, and in the case of George Floyd, we look at police brutality, what you see is a pattern of disorder and dysfunction, where there is the unspoken and unconscious acquiescence to a power differential. I must go back now to my earliest recognition of this power differential. I think it was what was it, August 27th, 1963. And it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. I believe it was August 27th. My father was taking a bus down to Washington, D.C. for the March on Washington. I was little. My mother wouldn't let me go because I was all over the place. I was, she was worried there wouldn't be enough bathrooms in Washington, D.C., so she wouldn't let me go. But there's a picture in the Troy record of my father leading folks. He was the president of the Troy YMCA. Troy is part of the capital cities, Albany, Troy, Schenectady, in New York. He was a pastor. His name was Reverend Mack Brandon, and he was not only president of Troy YMCA, but he was also a consultant to then Governor Nelson Rockefeller. And our house was full of talk about civil rights. This is 1963. Well, it was for many a victorious march. You've heard about it, the March on Washington. I have a dream. He came back ebullient. He came back full of joy because, there was solidarity. People came from all over the country. There were thousands of people. There were 44 who came from our city. There was no mistake, however, that 44 was an island in the middle of tradition, which that tradition would thwart every bit of progress that we would attempt. We would attempt to march in Troy, march in Albany, march in Schenectady. Well, there was segregation in the stores. There was segregation in the banks. It was there, it was blatant. And yet I was a little kid, and yet I could sense it. There's something about children. They can sense what's really going on. So the joy turned into, once again, distress. A year later, 1964, the movement continued. And of course, they would hear the news, and just a year and a half later, there was this place called the Pettus Bridge. The Pettus Bridge was was a place where the locale of something called Bloody Sunday. Bloody Sunday was an event that happened after the murder of someone named Jimmy Jackson, and it was a second wave of violence. It's been a lot of years since 64, 65. It's been a lot of years since 1968. Did I say Jimmy Jackson? Jimmy Jackson was a guy who was protecting his mother because at this protest, it was a demonstration, and it was just a month before Bloody Sunday. It was a peaceful demonstration, and police were beating with a baton Jimmy Jackson's mother. So he tried to protect them from beating her with a baton, and they shot him point blank and killed him. And so we have the pathos again and again. How long will this go on? How long will this go on? 65. 65 turns into 68, and of course, anyone knows the lore of 68. There was so much assassinations and there was so much embattlement. The 70s, the same thing. The 80s were the same thing. Brutality, of all sorts of violence, and that violence sometimes was emotional and mental violence as well as physical violence. And lo, these many years later, now it's 2020. There were two events that happened last week. Yeah, two events that happened. I guess it was a little bit more than a week ago now. They happened within days of each other. Everyone knows about George Floyd, and we're going to go there, but there was something that happened before that, or happened during that same period of time. There was a woman in Central Park, and this woman in Central Park evoked this power differential, evoked some assumptions that were held in our society, 2020. And as I watched the TV, I thought, that could be me. Now, I must tell you, I'm not a bird watcher, and I don't think I'll ever be a good one. But I said, that could be me. Because she blatantly said, I'm going to call the cops. She understood the power relationship in society. She understood something that I have understood since I was standing there next to the buses. They got on the bus to the March on Washington. She understood something which I understood not as the agent, but as the target all of my life. Yes, full of joy, a wonderful life. I've loved my life, and yet the life has been full of this nagging injury. And so when she said, I'm going to call the cops and I'm going to tell the African-American man, that pierced my heart because I knew it was true. And I knew if it was the wrong police person who came, that it could have been a different story. How can there be the comfort? Now, I must tell you, there have been any number of things that have been said on air, any number of things have been said from the highest levels of government that I wonder, and I say to myself, do people hear this? How is there a comfort with the divisiveness that we are hearing? Not as a political matter, but as a human matter. I'm a Christian minister. And I don't know if there's anything that vexed me more than the fact that many of my fellow Christians seem to be comfortable with some of the divisiveness that was. So I said, this is a human matter. Let's forget all our labels. This is human. Do you see what I see? And then I finally dared to look at the Minneapolis videotape. Now, I said I finally dared to look because I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It generally takes a day before I can watch these videos. It takes a couple days. When I see a video of a police person and I see someone on the ground, I know where this is going to go. And I see a black body on the ground, I know where it's going to go. So I didn't see it yet. just, it seems, a few weeks before in my timeline, my sense of time is terrible, there was a guy who was me. I'm very curious. At one time, and don't laugh for the people who know me well, I used to jog. And I was jogging. I used to jog. And when I'm jogging, I'm curious. Have you ever seen a house that's open and you want to see the construction? You want to see the construction of what's going on. You're just curious. You've never been in this path before. Well, this guy named Marbury, he was jogging and he saw construction. And yet when he left that place, he became target practice. The perpetrators found their target. And yet there didn't seem to be a hue and cry from quarters that I would think, well, where are you? Where's your comfort? Where's your discomfort? You're not saying anything. Finally, I looked at George Floyd and something broke. I had seen too many all my life of this thing. And there was a point at which I said, I don't care. There's things that you consider when you're clergy. You're thinking, okay, well, what should I say? What shouldn't I still say? I said, there are points in which you say, well, listen, I got to take my clergy tab off because this is crazy. And so there was anguish. There was anguish in the streets. And I expected there to be anguish, and I understood the anguish, and I understood if there was violence. I understood the not taking any more of this. What I did not expect, however, that there would be a joining of this anguish of white people. I had sat so long watching people being comfortable. But there's something really different that happened. So there's been this arc. There's been an arc of timeline over the past week. The first part of the week, there was demonstration and angst and anxiety and anger. And I joined with them because there is a time, there's never been, and I wrote this in Facebook, there's never been a time of revolution that wasn't sparked by a violent event. Never. Ask Moses. Ask Pharaoh. Ask any person who was a historian, anthropologist of social revolution. The social revolution, it just means take your foot off my neck. And let's move to another understanding. I was thinking about going back to Troy, New York. There's this place called Prospect Park. Prospect Park is right in the center of Troy. And anyone who was going to RPI or Emory Willard or Russell Sage, there's a number of colleges in the area, State University of New York and Albany. You've probably gone to the Prospect Park. It's right in the center of town. And you can drive to the top and there's a vista view of the city landscape. There's also a little park and there are the seesaws. And I remember with my friends, maybe in fourth grade, fifth grade, we would get on the seesaws. And there was one incident where someone got on the seesaw and he liked to be high. And the other person is low. And you know how it works. You push off and you're high and you're low and you're high and low. But then what happened was another friend played a prank and held the person who was down. And as a result, he could not be afforded the vista view of the wonderful landscape of Troy. He was held down. And then my friend was looking saying, isn't this great? Isn't this great? Because he's looking at this wonderful vista and he's seeing this great view. He says, isn't this great? And the other person said, let me off, get off me so I could get up. And I thought that moment was a perfect metaphor because it was kind of like an invisible knapsack on the person who was down, who wanted to also get that view. It seems like that sometimes when I look at, the civil discourse that we go through. And I thought about that this week, and I thought, when it first started, when I saw, one demonstration, and then I saw 10 cities, and then I saw 25 cities, I said, listen, I don't care what happens. I don't care what erupts. Something has to change in this country. And then there was some violence. There was looting and violence. To be expected. To be expected. I knew something had to happen because there was a pure emotion that went along with something that was so wrong, and there needed to be something said which would distract from that emotion. This is in my mind. And so looting came. And at first I thought, okay, maybe these are young people and they're rebel rousers. But I looked at the complexion of the looters, and I thought that they might all be Black, and many of them were white. And I'm saying, what's going on here, Mac? I'm seeing that the broad expanse, the broad majority of demonstrators were peaceful. And at the end of the demonstrations, at the end, and maybe in the middle of the night, you would see people breaking glass and looting. And yet it was all conflated together. And so people who were just looking at the news, they turn it on in the morning and say there was looting after the demonstrations. And of course, people would say, oh, the looting, look what they're doing. I don't condone that. And that became a topic of conversation. And I said, of course. But then there came another wave. And this other wave happened that people continued to march. And I must tell you, after this weekend, watching the marches that have gone on all across the country and in our county, and in boroughs and villages and townships and cities that whispered, this is much too conservative a place for that people were marching. Not only marching, but saying Black Lives Matter, which just 8 years ago was a pejorative. Black Lives Matter was met by all lives matter, a statement of fragility. All lives matter. Indeed, they do. Blue lives matter. Indeed, it does. And then it was a pejorative, but here we are 8 years later, and everybody's saying Black Lives Matter. I saw someone in the news say, George Floyd is no martyr. And of course I expected that. He's no hero. Look at his record. And I thought about how I looked at the same newspaper clipping of that bus going to Washington, D.C. And I look at whenever there was a Black person in the clipping, it always said, either, depending on the year, colored man, robs bank. Negro man goes, to college. And I always think there's always this tag. So as I sat here, I thought about at the end of last night, I thought when I weigh everything together and I think about 50 years of what's been going on, I have cautious hope. I have cautious hope because this joining together of people, I haven't seen in a long time. I'm cautiously hopeful because I've seen an ebb and flow. I've seen kind of 4 feet forward and 3 feet back. And on last Monday, I said, I have to do something. On Wednesday, I said, I have to do something. I have to do a forum. I have to do something. And when Jean called, it was the perfect time. This is what Jean said. Jean says, I've marched, Jean Johnson. I have been involved in protests, but it seems like nothing has happened. Here are her words. It seems like we haven't pushed the needle forward. And I thought about it, and she said, I know nothing. She was totally exasperated. She said, can you talk to people? And I said, I would love to, because that kind of vulnerability is exactly what we need in our community. The kind of vulnerability where we talk to each other, the kind of vulnerability where we look and we hear each other's point of views, but more importantly, the kind of assertive, aggressive accountability in love one to another that we have. So when someone raises a flag of contention that does not have basis, that someone is comfortable enough to address it. I have cautious hope because I have seen blogs where someone raises the flag of contention and say, yeah, but the looters. And then someone else will say, yes, the looters are bad and they are terrible, and they are terrible. But it is, let us not forsake the prize. The prize is that this sin, which is so terrible in our country, is racism. There are any number of isms. There's classism, there's sexism, there's religious prejudice. I mean, there are any number of isms. But there's something about racism, which is at the very crux. It's a crucible principle of our country's existence. From its very beginning, it's an old concept. It's a 15th century concept, this notion of race. It's a construct. It's not inherent. It's not in the genes. It's not in the DNA. It's a construct, and it was constructed to protect and make money. And so we have this ideology which moves from Europe on the boats to the United States. It finds its way in laws, in the very foundational laws. It finds its way in the founding militias to protect property and money. In New England, the founding militias were protecting, sea-bearing things, sea-bearing merchandise. In the South, where militias were, I think it was the National Constable Association in a report in 1995. They were talking about the inception of militias, which turned into police forces. They talked about New England, but they said the real militia movement was started in the South, and the militia movement in the South were slave patrols. At the very inception of militias, of what was called night patrols, at the inception of the police, the inception of it was to police slaves. And so the relationship of police and those who were enslaved in our country is a long one. And in fact, from the very origins. Let me step back for a second to say, I said the enslaved, not slaves, because that's a very important distinction. If you ever get an opportunity to watch Roots, there's a guy, Kunta Kinte. And Kunta Kinte, there's this wonderful scene. If you want to, you can write me and I'll tell you where the link is, but it's right now, just find it on YouTube, where Kunta Kinte leaves this, he tries to leave his plantation, he escapes. And he will not say that he has an Americanized name. Well, they catch him. And they whip him and whip him and whip him to say that his name is Toby, because they've given him the name Toby. And at a particular moment of compromise, sorrowful compromise, he says, my name is Toby, because he's decided that to live, he must take on this name. But to be sure, he let his children know that my real name is Kunta Kinte. Why is that important? Because the people were full and whole and wholesome people who were brought here. There have been any number of moments in history where people were taking from their locales and other people tried to make them less. The American experience was that you are 3/5 of a human, but We were whole people, but enslaved. And so any number of compromised excuses were given as to why we should continue in this country to keep feet on necks. Now, I'm speaking now, and in subsequent meetings, I want to speak with other people, but I just want to lay a foundation of who we are from kind of an emotional piece. I find myself looking at where do we go from here with a certain level of hope. And that's where I want to listen. I have put together a resource list, and there are people and experts who are listening right now who have expertise in particular areas. Why? Why is it important to listen to each other? Because that moment where Kunta Kinte said that he was Toby was a moment that some would say, well, the person whipping him or the person who was ordering it was a person who was full of personal racism. But in fact, it was an institution. And so there's like three levels here. We have personal racism, we have social cultural racism, and we have institutional racism. And so the individual racism is what we all decry. It's what we all, it's the people who says, I don't see color. Of course you see color. I don't see color, they say. That person is racist and I don't like it. And that's a dangerous, this is a dangerous moment. And the reason that I am so happy to be able to talk, it's a dangerous moment to say, I just don't like what happened with George Floyd and it shouldn't happen again. But the seeds are there to happen next week. And that's why we're together. That we finally want to, what I'm hopeful is that we finally want to address the seeds of how there could be this power differential. How we as humane people in this country, we who say, America the Beautiful, we who lift the flag, we who are people of faith, do we or do not we want those who have had the foot on the neck to have the opportunity that befits them being who they are, which is whole beings. And so in terms of institutional racism, it finds its way in economic racism. It finds its way in housing. It finds its way in the ways that the government had preordained, the way in which the government disallowed the movement of African Americans to particular areas. The government condoned putting African Americans in particular areas and condoned the lack of support in those areas. Now, what I want you to do is, there are a couple of books that I think are vital. I think that White Fragility is one book. It's a book called White Fragility, and so many people have been talking about it. Get it tomorrow. Get it tomorrow. It's a great book. The Color of Law is another book. Get it tomorrow. It will tell you in detail and statistics how America created these urban districts. When we say urban, sometimes that's euphemism for African American. Let me also back up and say this, that the story since that moment in 1963 of Appalachian, of the movement upward of the people is quite a story. The story of Black wealth, the story of Black upward mobility is quite a story. And I don't discount that. But in the midst of that upward mobility, oh, you didn't know? Because it's not mediated, right? But that story of upward mobility is tempered by this consistent bias, institutional bias. And it affects every sphere. There's this place where, and I said in a letter to my colleagues, that living in Glen Rock, Ridgewood, knowing the police chief, it was one of the first times I have ever felt safe. It's one of the first times that I didn't flinch when I see a police car. That's true. I jokingly say that Methuselah is my cousin and that my last pet was a dinosaur. I'm old. I'm telling you, I've lived a long time in many places, but this is the first time that I have felt when I see a police car, I'm not concerned with them turning the red lights on. The only other place that I felt that was London, and that's because the cops didn't have guns. And you have to separate what, well, you know, my cousin's a cop. Yeah, well, I have great friends who are cops too. But this is where we differentiate institution from personal. Because the institutional place is created to maintain the status quo. And when that status quo does not support the wholesomeness and wholeness of every member of society, then we have a problem. I was shocked when they said they were going to defund the Minneapolis Police Department. I had to think about that for a second. And I said, what will we do? And then I'm saying, what are you talking about, Mack? I said, that's amazing. Why? Because it's always coming down to the money. Because you have union representatives who say, no matter what you do, I don't care who you kill. I decided not to do statistics today. No matter what you do, what you kill, we got you covered. It is a very dangerous thing when loyalty comes before principle. Loyalty is absolutely important, but never before principle. It should be loyalty with principle. Sometimes we've seen in higher echelons of leadership, people say, well, this person's loyal. And that's the only thing that matters. We see people say, well, how can you be comfortable with what seems to be kind of an immoral way of ambulating through society? Well, we're loyal. And so I think it's really quite a revolutionary act that the city said, okay, in your loyalty, we will defund you. And that is a groundswell of cells all over the country that says we have had enough. Now, one word about this kind of notion of cells. In 1963, at the March of Washington, leadership was hierarchical. You have a leader, Martin Luther King. You have people who are Roy Wilkins. You have people who are leaders. And the movements are known by their leadership, by their charismatic leadership. This was something different. This was different cells of people coming together to say, we are uniting around the principle. Sort of like the difference between AT&T phone company and the internet. It's kind of like everybody's doing their thing, but doing it in concert. And so you can't corral it, which was what made this so momentous to me, to see people from every walk of life saying, this is enough. Now, if I saw white people marching and they were saying, stop killing, that would be what I would expect. If they would say no more killing or treat people right, I would expect that. You know, we've had any number of times in which particular groups have gotten together to stand together to say that we are against immoral behavior. But sometimes our wording, sometimes it seemed like we weren't strident enough. Sometimes it seemed like we didn't go deeper into the issue. Sometimes I've stood with people from different faiths and we have stood on the right principles, but sometimes I think that we had confabs, we got together and we felt good, but our minds and hearts changed. Well, this was not just, this is not a good thing. This was white people saying Black Lives Matter. Wait a minute. So is it possible that we can actually start talking about that which is underneath the event? The event is certainly terrible. but it told me that people have seen the events and that people have said, listen, there must be something I can do. And so the question is, what can I do? Well, there's any number of areas when we look at institutional racism that we can attack. We can attack the healthcare system. We can attack economic disparities in the healthcare system. And my hope is that there will be people on who are expert in that area. I know from having gone to different meetings that there are people who are not only interested in it, but who are actively working in the area of healthcare disparities. In the letter from the interreligious group, Sarah, who is a champion in my mind, she said, our second line, I think, said, thousands of Black and brown bodies. And when I first saw that line, because people said, Mack, you must have said that. I said, no, that was Sarah, right? She said, thousands of Black and brown bodies. And I said, whoa, the criminal justice system is exhibit A of how thousands of Black and brown bodies are mistreated each and every day. You know, it's an interesting thing. Here's another book that's a required book for you. It's called The New Jim Crow. Get it tomorrow. The New Jim Crow is a book that details how throughout history there have been any number of movements which sought to detain African-American, mostly African-American men, and that the prison system is the latest. Now, for those of you who don't know the prison system, we have the most detainees in the Western world. And one of the things that happens in this seesaw, in the power differential, is that one, to find their comfort, has to find ways in which to justify. Now, we started off by saying, I talked a lot about the wholesomeness and being whole. Either African Americans are genetically different from European Americans, from whites, Blacks, or either they're different genetically or they're not. We have proven in science that they're not, but I need to say again that they are not. If they are not, then we are different, we are subject to social constructs. And so if we're subject to social constructs, and there's any number of things that we're going to see, sociological happenings that we're going to see. Let's go back to Toby. You know, Toby, I think there's a social psychologist, Harriman and Jackson. And in a study in 1991, I think both of them out of one did a study on white identity construction, and Jackson did a study on Black identity construction. So they came together on a study, and they were looking at agent and target. They were looking at these stages of assault. You know, the first level is assault, and if one has an aggressive assault, if you're a majority or if you are the person in control, you assault someone, and then they have a choice. Usually the first stage is naive acceptance, that this is just the way it is, and any child learns who is under assault, regardless of where you come from. You learn that this is just the way it is. There are places that you shouldn't go, Mack. There are places that you shouldn't go, 4-year-old Mack. There's things that you shouldn't say in particular places. There are times that mother is quiet. And I'm looking at mother and I begin to learn. I'm looking at father and I'm beginning to learn, being born in Salisbury, North Carolina. I'm beginning to learn that there are certain times and certain places that people smile. They change personalities. We change. And so there's this naive acceptance. And then we go to another stage. And we go to a stage where we go into not just passive, but we go into active acceptance. Because we know to get along, to get on, we got to get along. And then there's this moment that there's resistance. There's kind of trying to push against the seams. And we see how far it gets us, and we have to see what that means. Now, on the other side, the agent, when they're doing this is the way it should be. Let me go back to the seesaw. You see, the guy at the seesaw is getting a great vista of the town. And the person on the bottom with the person holding their shoulders down, he's justifying it. He's saying, boy, this is a good view. This is a good view. Now, there may be a little bit of resistance and it may go equal. But the guy, this is what my experience was, but I had not put it in sociological terms. He was saying, no, I want my view again. In a way, he wanted to make the park great again. He wanted to see the view. He wanted to be able to see the view. And resistance, you find any number of things that you say. The victim. Oh, he was a bad guy anyway. He was a robber anyway. Yes, but those bodies are still black and brown. It seems time after time after time. And so the criminal justice system is yet another area that institutionally we need to look at. I find myself thinking about what are the ways in which we will coalesce in these immediate days. And my fear is that, like a receding tide, that folks will say that was a bad thing, but we'll go back to business as normal. And I implore you that we shall not go back. We should not go back to business as normal. That there is something which is magical about us talking to each other. There's something which is magical about us hearing each other. There's something which is magical about us actually finding our way into each other's life, to find out what makes you tick. There was an interesting thing that happened a couple of days ago. I was in a supermarket and I had a few calls. People said, people were talking to me, and this was my experience. People were talking to me that never talked to me. They were smiling. They were smiling even through their face mask. I can see it because I can see the cheeks go up. They were smiling at me. Why are you smiling at me? I don't know you. But they were smiling because they saw me. They saw me. Maybe they had just come from a march, but they saw me. And I had one person who was really mad because she had been seen for the first time in her life. She said, where have they been? And so there's going to be this moment where, communication and finding our way to each other, has fits and starts. But find our way to each other, we must. And so I just wanted to lay groundwork, and what I had hoped was to hear from you and to hear your voices, to hear the things that you have to say, your experiences, because I can't help but think that for some of you, that, this March or, whatever you went to yesterday or in Ridgewood, they're going to have something on at the YMCA on Wednesday. Park Ridge is Thursday, any number of places. But there were places that I was a little surprised. I didn't know they had something in Hawthorne, I guess, yesterday. They had something in Lodi yesterday. I used to live in Lodi. I said, oh boy, they are having things all over the place. And what my hope is that we start talking to each other and continue talking to each other and continue talking about specific places that we can donate, specific ways in which we can contribute, specific organizations. Now, everyone will have different places, but let's all at this moment decide that we will contribute the resources of our mind, the resources of our body, the resources of our treasury to something to make this country better. And I'll open it up with that. I didn't want to give you the list. I wanted us to construct a list. Now, I have a resource list. I think Joanne Van Zandt is on. She has a resource list. Jan Phillips is, and please understand my heart when I make jokes, and I don't mean disrespectful. I call her Mecca. She's the Ridgewood Mecca for all things social. All roads lead to Jan. And, there are people who are very involved, and I want those resource people. I want us to be able to talk together. So I hope I haven't gone too long. But I do want to open up the pot so that we can begin to talk. Now, before that, I want you to know that on Wednesdays, I do this too, where I don't talk. I do this on my own Zoom. So I do a Zoom town meeting where I just listen. And so if anybody goes to my Facebook page, Mack Brandon, come on and join, and we have a discussion on Wednesday at 9 p.m., which is my hope that actually we could talk. So let's open up the pot and let's see what you have to say.
Mack. What we'll do, I think we have a reasonable enough size that I can manage muting and unmuting you if you have questions. So if you just type into the chat that you'd like to speak or ask or, just have the floor, then I can unmute you. I'll sort of call you out and unmute you, and you can say what you are hoping to say. But if you're able to pop that into the chat first, it will make things a little easier. Or you can try to wave a hand and I'll try to see you scrolling through the gallery.
While we're waiting, I just want to say that we definitely will put together a book discussion. And I think our first book will be White Fragility, if everyone's okay with that. Sarah, you and I could kind of come up with a way to make that work.
White Fragility is a great, 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 great start.
Okay.
There is such a sensitivity about the area of racism, and I wanted to be ginger about it, and I want us to read the book so that we can actually really, really speak about this thing in comfort. And actually, the work that needs to be done, and what I was trying to say, the work that really needs to be done is so hopeful because so many white people are now engaged in this conversation. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking about it, when Black folks are talking about it, it's one dynamic. But when we're both talking about it, and when white folks are talking to each other about it, it's another dynamic. And so this is a hopeful engagement. Okay, what's the first question? What's the first?
You got it, Sarah?
Yeah, Lynn Needle. I unmuted you. You should be able to.
Oh. Thank you. I just want to thank you for your profound thoughts and for articulating with such heartfelt passion your thoughts and your kind of uncensored emotion. It's really powerful. And I've been a contributing artist and just, individual in the community in Ridgewood for more than 30 years, supporting all lives. I really believe in the reality that all life matters, not all lives matter, all life matters, because Absolutely. Without the animal planet, the insect planet, which is endangered, without the bees, the monarchs, the pollinators, we don't have our food source, then we don't have mankind, humankind. So I think that words are really powerful. And as a professional dancer and artist, I walk the walk of nonverbal communication in my art form. And what I want to ask you very respectfully and profoundly is, where do you envision the arts in making a profound change? We look at the remarkable contribution of the great Alvin Ailey, the great Pearl Primus. These were great, great artists that we all had to study and revere in our arts education, certainly in my dance education. And as you know, Alvin Ailey's work was rooted from biblical inspiration and was so profound. And he's revered on a global scale, even after his passing many years ago. He came from great trauma and strife, and as you well know, in his family situation. And I think that we're looking at is not just the reality of race and protest and unrest, but we're looking at so many layers of issues of discomfort. And I want you to know that we all want to help in the most immediate and profound way, and are asking you to be specific in what we can do to act immediately, certainly in the long term, but it's like small, medium, large ice cream sundae. I could get 1 scoop of ice cream, 2 scoops, or 3 scoops. What could we do in a small way, a medium way, and a large way to help you and help your profound thoughts and ideas?
Okay, a couple things. Thank you so much, first of all. I teach at Ramapo College, and there's a course that I've been teaching for 25 years called Black Experience Through Music, where I trace the chronology of America since its inception to the present through the lens of the Black experience, but specifically through the lens of Black musicianship. And so we look at the history and we look at Black expression. One of the things that is so important and so important to say is that we start the class by recognizing that every person in the class has a unique history, which does not supersede anyone else's. And as such, all lives do matter. And unfortunately, it has become a pejorative. It's become a retort. But in fact, especially as a person of faith, all lives do matter. And so it behooves us to look at a neglected history, a neglected sociology, and look at it through that lens. I've really been toying with the idea of doing an online course or doing a separate course of just this chronology of American history. There's so much history that we are not taught. I'm going to get to your answer, Lynn. I'm long-winded. But the thing that I didn't talk about was educational inequity. One of the very first things we can do is look at how we can educate ourselves, but then how we can educate each other. That education of each other extends to the institution of schools. We've had now this pandemic that we're coming out of, and it was obviously an opportunity to, if you will, homeschool. But I challenge us to look at the curriculum of our neighborhood schools. I saw a letter from a superintendent a couple of days ago that really looked wonderful. It didn't say much, but it looked wonderful. It was a pro forma letter about this is what we're doing and how we're attending to Black lives, how we're attending to Black studies. It didn't really say anything. It was what every district says when they do their report about, what we're doing. I always look for one line, and that line is, but we will seek ways to understand better. There was nothing in that said we will see. The only thing it says, if you have specific questions, as an educator, I'm always looking at, when I look at a situation, I'm always wondering, how can I teach this situation? How can I learn from this situation and impart that upon other people, upon students? And so I think at the very first, the question is, who can I educate? Secondly, as a musician, I try to play piano. As a musician, I am always looking for, are there areas of music, are there expressions that are speaking to this moment? I'm looking at hip hop and saying, are there expressions? Yes, there have been some really, really poignant hip hop expressions. This guy named Nick Cannon, who's sort of, he used to be married to Mariah Carey. He has this really, this strong statement called "I Can't Breathe Again." It's laced with profanity, but it is strong. And I said, I just want strong statements, right? I expect any moment, and I saw some jazz artists who are beginning to speak to this. I expect dance to come out. I think I saw someone on IG who already did a dance from Paris, already doing a dance with George Floyd. So as for artists, I would say, consider your art form and consider yourself as a citizen, and how can you contribute using your own resource, which is your body, which is the piano. How can I speak to this condition in a way, pardon me, I'm a pastor, that ministers unto people? Right? That's the first thing. There's an old biblical thing that says, Moses says, what's in your hands? Right? And so we look at the things that are in our hands, and as opposed to before we call up the NAACP or the Urban League or any number of organizations, which we'll get to. What is in your hands? What can you do? What cousin can you call up that does not know the history? How can you educate yourself so that you can educate the person? There was a time, I remember going to Thanksgiving meal, and it was a Thanksgiving meal with ex-family. And there was always somebody at the Thanksgiving table who was spouting off stuff that it was just crazy talk. And what I just did was keep my mouth shut. You know, and I decided, I said, no, can't keep my mouth shut now. I have to be assertive. What's in my hand is knowledge, and I want to use that knowledge to minister unto someone, because that's how it happens. It's going to happen in the little cells. It's going to happen in your dance. It's going to happen in my piano piece. It's going to happen where I make amalgam both my understanding of what's going on in the world and my ability to express it. Okay, Lynn, is that a start? I'm assuming you say yes. Okay.
Okay, Martin.
Okay, Reverend Mack, you can preach. I hear you. I love it. Your voice, your tone, your face, the music that you put out is absolutely beautiful. I am touched to the heart. I'm so grateful for that. And I think the place where you started from of hearing from the heart is really one of the most powerful things I've heard all week in the last 2 weeks. I really want to hear that. I want to take it in, and the place where, the place where my heart was touched, when you talked about 1963, I was 11 years old. I didn't live in this country when I was 11 years old, right? 1963, but you took me to 1968. I was in Washington, D.C. I took the train home from Pennsylvania through Trenton, Philadelphia, Baltimore, the day after Martin Luther King was killed. Every city was on fire.
Yep, absolutely.
Every city was on fire. This is the fire that I've lived with my whole life, and so I don't worry when cities are on fire, because I think things are moving in a certain direction. The thing that really struck me about what you said is the capacity to ignore. Like, how does the capacity to ignore, right? How did we see Mr. Floyd, and Mr. Floyd had been stepped on and killed so many times? What happened? It's like, how did we see ourselves getting killed, right? Because so many times the deaths have happened and we couldn't see it, and I guess what I already said my heart, but I lied. What really touched my heart was when you said, knowing the police chief of Ridgewood, living literally with Glenrock, knowing the police chief, you no longer had an experience, right? So there's something about this immediate community. Like, I'm interested in everybody reading everything they can about, racism, but I really want to come back to you, right? I want to come back to your Zoom. I want to come back to this community, and I want us to try to understand together how we live as a community that's been able to ignore this as white communities.
So
I think my one hypothesis is that it has to do with the mindless pursuit of self-interest. But, I think unpacking, wealth and how we manage wealth and what we do with wealth in Ridgewood, Glenrock, Hawthorne, you name it. I think this is the place where I think we need to understand a little better what's happening and take advantage of the awareness that young people have brought, because young people don't actually believe they're going to be wealthier than their parents anymore. The American dream, it went away. So I think there's an opening in that.
Good words. So, this is what I'd say. I hope that I hope if this was my Zoom, I would feel more comfortable, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm going for broke. What I tell my class is there's an abused girl. There's an abused girl in the family. She's abused when she's young. At some point, the whole family knows. But at a certain point, the whole family has a stake in protecting the silence. Now, the girl goes to this phase, we're going to talk about the social constructs. She goes to a phase where she accepts it at a certain point passively, actively, she has to accept, but then there's resistance. But the family, the silence is vital, because if the silence is ever broken, the world will know who the family is. The whole stasis of the family will be broken. And so what happens is this young girl grows up and she matures, but there's a brokenness in her. She's been told she's whole, but everything around is a lie. And one of the things that's making her crazy is, how can no one say anything at the table? This actually happened, and someone was talking to me. Until one day, you break the silence and everybody comes down on you. People who you thought were allies, they come down on you. Why? Because at a certain point, you are protecting the interest of what looks to be the family so much. And it's infuriating. It's crazy. It leaves one broken when I see the comfort that we're talking about. And so bringing this stuff out and actually talking, because we are family. Bringing this stuff and talking about it and saying, yes, people say so much. And I've been here now in Ridgewood since 1984. And I have heard, now I wasn't born in Ridgewood, that makes a big difference. And I didn't go to Ridgewood High, it makes a big difference. But we hear how it's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's at all costs, let's protect, and it is, but you know what? There's a scab. There's a scab in the middle of that smooth skin, and it's a scab throughout all our communities. And our willingness to pull it off and look at it will be the first step. These cells of community, which all have scabs on them, when we pull it off and address it, that will be the beginning of our progress. So I absolutely think, and as a white man, and me as a Black man, talking, I think that's kind of a special communication that we have to have, because in societies, anthropologically, it's always the men who kill the other men of the society to maintain the power base. And it's the African-American men in a society who are most under assault. Studies say that proportionally, the most educated skew in American women are African-American women. They're the most educated skew proportionally of women in America, right? But African-American men is another story altogether. And so society puts its knee on the neck of African-American. So the only way through is that actually we talk to each other, and we can talk to each other heart to heart, right? Because if it's the power of our heart, then perhaps we can put weapons down. Right? Because if we don't do that, what I'm thinking is, frankly, if you can just allow me to be me, when I see, I'm going to be real frank, I don't know how many people are on right now. Quite a few?
Quite a few. We're at 58 on here.
Okay. So, when I see this, and it's like the 50th police, brutality thing. It makes me want to pick up a weapon. It makes me want to just take a board or a baseball bat and smash the first white man that I see. That's what's going on in my flesh, right? And then I have to negotiate with myself. Like, Mack, that's not going to do anything. But the problem is that is a contention within me, right? Because I said, if I can be a faceless person and have this done to me, I don't know who to lash back at. I can't lash back at that person, because no doubt that person is going to be exonerated. I can't get to that person. Well, if you could just tell me where that person is, then maybe I can handle them. But I can't, and I have to do something with this rage. And so, was that Martin? You look like a good candidate. So I'm saying that the only way through is for us to see character to character who each other is. Let me say one more thing, and we can do the next thing. What I said about the schools, don't let that fly by you. Schools, they say, well, Black History Month will do kind of this and kind of that. No. You really must, number one, in your recruitment policies, your human resource policies, you want to make sure that you have community involvement. In the same way as the police department, you want to have community involvement. If I see someone who looks something like me, I'm more inclined to be in community with them. And it is a way through association with the rest of the folks that should be part of who we are. But secondly, there should be a want. I don't care if it's first grade or if it's 12th grade. I teach college. I am telling you that from these wonderful school districts, I get people every semester and I have to re-educate them, right? And of course, these are the schools that say, well, listen, we have this, we have a Black student union, we have an African-American, we do Black, you know, and they treat it as, well, all lives matter, and they all do. But there is a history, and I'm not even talking radically, I'm just saying there's a true history of America, which when you grapple with it and understand the history, you can appreciate it. You can appreciate it for what it is. You can appreciate the fact that it is founded on aggression, but in the middle of this thing and understanding the aggression, that perhaps we don't want to carry that on. We don't want to carry that aggression on. We want to actually, in this place that we've all found ourselves, some for benevolent reasons, some for nefarious reasons, that we are in this place. And in this petri dish, can we find an experiment to find a place where we can become something new, where we can become a moral exemplar that other people might say, oh, I wonder if we can get together too. It's no accident that people are marching all around the world. It's no accident. It's George Floyd is what they feel too. They are in league with us. They are, in solidarity with us. But, the Paris March is something. They got thousands and thousands of people because they had their own George Floyd. Ghana, they're marching. They had their own George Floyd from a colonial, it gets complicated. But I'm saying it happens all over the world. So we have to just keep on speaking to each other and keep on speaking to each other heart to heart. That's a long answer, but okay, next one.
Kristen?
Bless you, Martin. Bless you.
Hi, Mac. It's Kristen Plumley.
Hey.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay.
So I actually I'm going to try to squeeze in 2 questions here, but if we only have time for the one, that's okay. Okay, so as a singer, I'm thinking along the same lines as Lynn Needle. I want to be able to help people through my voice. And in terms of exactly what to sing, I think that will come up as time goes on. Sometimes y'all just be thinking, I'm like, that's the perfect song. That's the message I need to sing,
Or sing what you sing.
Sing what you sing, exactly. But my question is, okay, if I want to sing We Shall Overcome or Lift Every Voice and Sing, is that like a form of misappropriation? Like, can that be looked at as like, oh, here's the white girl trying to say she's friends with Black people and singing that,
Right. And so it depends, first of all, it depends on the context.
Right.
And it depends on your heart.
Right.
And the reason I interjected and said, sing what you sing, because when you sing, and I don't say you sing it, but when you sing My Fair Lady, right?
I do sing that.
Okay, there you go. All right, so when you sing My Fair Lady, I feel pretty, right? Whatever the song is. When you present it to people and expose people, perhaps expose an audience to musical theater, expose an audience to opera who has not seen it before, maybe it's a new audience, then you have done your piece. You don't have to morph yourself. You simply have to put yourself in spaces that you can expose people to who you are, right? So
right.
we don't have to appropriate and kind of move ourselves into, no, it's okay. Just do you, because you are you, because you're great. And I saw you in all those dresses and on Facebook. Yeah, but just be you, but bring it to audiences that perhaps hadn't seen it before.
Yeah.
Right? And find ways, and that's how we can utilize our resources. Hey, do you know maybe an audience who would like to hear something? And then you can do some, tweaking, and maybe I'll do this song here, or maybe I'll do something with Borgie and Bess,
Right.
So that's my answer. You know,
Okay,
be you, but
that's
find
great,
ways
yeah.
to minister.
Right, right. And then sort of related to that, I was asked in church this past weekend, the music director, and we were doing a service specifically about George Floyd and about, you know, all this.
Right.
And so the music director had said, okay, I have two ideas for you. One is Strange Fruit, which I had never heard before. And so I looked
Really?
at the history of it. Oh my God.
Oh, yeah, Strange Fruit. I would play it now for you. It's a great song.
Wow. Yeah. So I really wanted to do that because it is just so awful.
And think about when Billy did it. Think about
Yeah.
what was, I think, 38, 39?
39.
Yeah.
It
When
got her into trouble.
Oh,
Yeah.
it you know, changed the arc of her career.
Right.
In the same way that Nina Simone,
Right.
you know, Mississippi, you know, changed the arc of her career. But how brave, how courageous it was.
Yes.
If anyone's never heard Strange Fruit, listen to it by Billie Holiday. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Sarah, please put that in the chat. But he also asked me to do a Marian Anderson song, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. But I remember listening to it and saying, I'm like, I can't pull this off with that kind of gravity. It just doesn't fit. So I know what you mean by what fits and what doesn't, but you know, I don't, you know, Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit and me are two very different things, but I really felt that song call to me. So
Yeah.
that's why I did it. But I like what you say, that I don't feel like I have to morph myself into something else to
Yeah.
get a point across.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of
do
sense.
you, because wherever your heart is, if it's true, then it will speak to who
Right.
it needs to speak to, you know.
Right.
So in examining the experience, find your way in, and you'll find certain things that
Right.
that sit right with you, and
Right.
you're off to the races.
Right. Okay, so here's my second question. I have a good friend from high school that I had not seen for years after we graduated high school and whatnot. And then when I was living in Brooklyn, I was at the gym and he just showed up right in front of my elliptical machine. I was like, Rodaline, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? So he lived in the same town I did in Brooklyn, so, or the same area. So we got kind of connected again. This was just maybe 15 years ago. And we started hanging out a lot and this and that. And then I moved to New Jersey, and we've still been in touch, you know, via social media and just online and stuff like that. But now I would like to get in touch with him again, but I almost don't know what to say. I just want to know how
okay.
and all that, but I don't want to be like, I'm calling all my Black friends because I want to see what it, you know, but
yeah. But you're calling all your Black friends. Okay.
I guess I am, but I just, you know.
Right. Okay. So, I would say, you know, why you want to call him? You want to call him because he got good biceps, or because he was a good guy, or because with all the stuff that has been going on lately, you'd like to get his thoughts? Because
it's all three, actually.
Okay, so if you thought about him and you'd like to get his thoughts, I'm receptive to anyone saying, well, what do you think about this? And because this is this is my take, right? And and I want to, you know, I've gotten a lot of calls from people, and I appreciate their spirit. And, you know, either they call and say, hey, just, you know, thinking about you, whatever. But, you know, we were talking, we were in dialogue, and there was something I want to ask you about that I didn't ask you then, you know, before. Or there was a particular thing, and I'm looking at it now in a different way. And that's, right. I think, an interesting conversation sparker. What's that, Eloise? I'm like, Eloise, I would like to give the advice column, all right? Yeah. Wear blue on the first date. No.
Yeah.
But no, I would make it something which is speaking truthfully about what sparked your interest in it in terms of substance, right? Because certainly he is looking at this thing from wherever he is, and certainly he's been affected, right? Yeah. And so if you're coming at it with a clean and a good intentioned heart, just see where he's coming from. Now, you may find them in any place. I'm talking about, I've laid it out in a kind of an emotive, kind of general way. We're all at different places with this thing, right? I must say, though, that if we had this conversation a week ago, I would have been more cautious because there was so much anger. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to be angry when you see the complexion of people walking up Rock Road in Glen Rock, right? It's hard to be real as angry when you say, wait a minute, I wasn't expecting this. Or in Hawthorne, or Lodi. You know, I haven't seen the pictures of Lodi, but I'm still kind of, whoa, okay. You know, it's hard to be as angry. You're angry, but then you realize that it's something which is larger and more complex. See, it was so easy in the 60s. There were these bad guys, and they spit on people, and they put buses on fire. Now it's all very subtle, right? Now it's all very subtle. And so what we must do is talk to each other, one to one, because then we can begin to tease out the subtleties. We can begin to tease out the humanity of each other. So call him and put on blue dress. Okay.
There's one other thing I want to say about him. He was actually the first person who opened my eyes to the racism that existed even 15 years ago. We went out one night. We were in Manhattan, and we saw a show, and it was late, and it was time to go home. So we both live in Brooklyn, but in different parts. And so I said, all right, well, let's get a cab. I'm going to get a cab. And then he said, okay, I'm going to take the subway home. And I said, why are you taking the subway home? Let's just go take a cab. He's like, Kristen, it's like after 11 o'clock at night. Like, no cab driver is going to pick me up. And it didn't compute. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, they'll pick you up. You're white. They won't pick me up. I never heard, it didn't even occur to me.
So over the weeks, we'll talk about those kind of things. But I mean that is privilege. And when we say privilege, sometimes we think of it, we think of it as a pejorative. But privilege is simply the benefit that one gets, right? Yeah. And sometimes we're walking around with silent privilege and we don't even know. I happen to be a Christian, right? And this is a Christocentric country, right? So if you are not Christian, you feel there are moments when everyone says, okay, let's pray or something. And you're feeling, or if someone schedules something on a Jewish holiday and you're Jewish, right? Unless you're made aware of it. And so we walk around sometimes with the benefits of that. As a man, right? There are some benefits. I walk around 2 o'clock in the morning anywhere I feel like going. Why? Because I'm a big black guy, and come on, you better come up to me because I'm getting ready to hurt you if you do anything wrong, right? 2 o'clock in the morning, I walk anywhere. I walk around a college campus at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's privilege, right? And I don't think about it until someone says to me, I'll say, oh, okay, well, we're going to go and do this thing at 11 o'clock at night. And someone says, yeah, but I don't have anybody to walk with me back home. And my first thing is to say, well, just walk by yourself. Right? So these are all those kinds of examples. And so my intent is always for us to understand without ever demeaning. So there are any number of things that we experience. We grow up kind of learning what places to go and what places not to go. And we know those groups are shady, and at a certain point you self-select not to be found in the dissonance of that company or the dissonance of those folks. And so our culture kind of is molded around these social circles where you're wanted and unwanted, right? And we learn that and understand that. But what we're trying to do now is kind of break through those molds. So, all right, blue's the color. All right, next person.
Okay, Jan. You got it?
I got it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all those thoughts with us today, Mack. It's really amazing to just listen. And thank you, Sarah, for helping open our eyes at the Unitarian Society. I think there was a moment maybe a year and a half ago, where I realized I don't know what I don't know. Mm-hmm. And that started me on this journey a little bit. And I think what we have is cognitive dissonance.
That's right.
I think cell phones and cell phone video have just captured stuff that was happening for years. And white people are saying, how can that be? And it was always happening, but now we have the video.
Yeah.
And the other thing that has been very powerful for me, one of our fellow congregants said it during Sarah's service last week. He said, so many people are saying, but I'm not racist. I don't see color, the whole right fragility thing. And he said, well, we have a racist society without any racists. And when you think about that, it just can't be true. So I think there's that dissonance. And I think people are coming to grips with it. So I think that's the moment.
That was like my associate at Metropolitan. She said one day something to the degree of, do you think you're misogynist? And I paused and had to say, well, yes. I have to, because I'm benefiting, and there are so many unknowns in the system, in the stream of misogyny that I'm not even aware of, and I love what you said. I don't know what I don't know. And all we can ask of people is to extend their antenna. There used to be this, every time I say that, there used to be this show called My Favorite Martian. And Uncle Martin used to have antennas which it extended up. But, extend your antennae of your social antennae, so that you are perhaps aware in a new way of things and people that you weren't before. And what you said was, hey, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I insisted when Jean was saying, okay, well, I think Mark is good. I think Arturo's good. I said, oh, you got to call that Sarah Lindsay, right? Because she's doing a great job if you're saying that. So God bless you both.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Jeannie Johnson, did you want to jump in?
Sure. Mack, I want to know, we said we were going to wrap this up at 8:30.
I could go to 10:30. You know me, I can go.
I know you. Yeah, you like your Zoom, you like your Facebook Live at 10 o'clock. I do have a couple of questions. First of all, let me just say that my son, and he graduated from Ridgewood High School last year, and he and his friends spent a good part of the day today composing a letter to the Ridgewood Board of Education saying, you really whitewashed our history lessons. And I was so shocked. I just didn't, I didn't realize it. But, he has a friend who is a Black girl, and she's like, no, man, it was not okay. Like, we didn't learn what we should have learned. And she educated those boys today. So, but I want to go back to the riots and the looting. If I understand you correctly, and I mean, this is what you and I talked about the other day too, that I have a friend who was in an area that was severely impacted by looting and rioting. And, she kept saying, well, our post office is gone and our police station is gone, and these people don't have a place to go have food. We can't go get food. We can't get groceries. Our grocery stores are gone now. Now what? Why did this happen? And my response was, I don't know, but I'm going to guess that rage took over. And rage said, I am more important than this building. I don't care. It can burn to the ground.
Have you ever seen a kid have a temper tantrum in the family?
This is what I said. Yeah, that's the comparison that I gave. It's like you go through this, you go through the process of elimination. When somebody doesn't have the words to put to their pain, they kick and scream.
It's rage against the machine.
Okay. So that's what you were saying to me.
And by the way, the looting and stuff is equal opportunity. That's the thing that's so interesting about it. I want you to look very carefully, not just at the at the vandalism, but look at the video of those looters. You'll see the equal opportunity, the white and black.
Exactly.
They're opportunists. So there are two camps. There are those who are enraged, and they're opportunists. And the opportunists are, that's the worst. That is the worst, right? Because they are calculatedly for one of two reasons: either one, to get the merchandise, or two, to thwart the movement. Mm-hmm. One of those two. and in either case, they should be prosecuted.
Right.
And so that's a separate issue from the movement.
Right. Can I bring up something that I heard? It was just so impactful. It was somebody that was on Twitter, and she did a little bit of a rant, and she said, talk to me about the looters. When our system shoves that in our face about how you have to have this watch or those sneakers or this whatever, and our system does not allow for that community to have that stuff, it's like, it's kind of like a middle finger to the system. Like,
so that's number one, that is metaphoric and it's symbolic, and for some people that's some lefty talk. And I would say this, I would say that we all have choices to make, and we are responsible for our choices. And so being enraged is entirely understandable. Being an opportunist is a decision that should come with consequences. And so when you have what was reported as someone stealing $500,000 from a furrier, that's an opportunist.
Oh, for sure.
And and we can't find any good any good metaphor for that. Oh, the community has been covered in the fur of terrible thing. No, you're an opportunist and you should go to jail, right? And I think that when we separate that from the movement, then we can keep our eyes on the prize. When people are enraged, when they light up a fire, when Martin was talking about Newark, I remember when I was a little kid, we went down Route 21 because I have cousins in Newark, and my aunt, and so we went to Newark after church, and we got as far as 21. When you first enter Newark, right before the gas station, you're 21, you're going past Bellevue, you first go, and I never forget, an army tank was right there, and that mount, I forgot what they call it, right? It turned and faced our car, and I remember my father said, "Okay, let's go home," right? And I was like, wow, I'd never seen a tank in the streets, right? I said, this is some serious stuff. And then when I started seeing the stuff that was going on with George Floyd, I said, this is 68 all over again. And I get it. I get it why Newark went in flames. It was right after Martin Luther King was assassinated. I get why all of these countries are in flames. But opportunists, that's something else. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. What was the other thing, G?
That's it. I just wanted to once again say thank you for doing this. And I just want to remind everybody once again that this is just the first of a 5-week series. Mack will be on with us every Monday to July the 6th and have some really great guests that are coming up with Mark Oler from West Side Press next week.
Yeah.
And Arturo Lewis from Hope Emmanuel on the 22nd. And of course, our wonderful Sarah from the Unitarian Society on the 29th.
So let me say this real quick. So the hope is, for instance, with Reverend Oler, Mark, is that as a white man that he's looked at, he's looking at these issues and he has a particular lens. And mm-hmm. So what I will do is I won't be talking as much as I'm talking now. I will be, allowing him to kind of look at our issues, but through his lens. And hopefully some light is shed that we can all relate to. And finally, again, I do a Zoom on Wednesday where I just listen to people. If you go on my Facebook page, it'll be public. And it's just anybody who wants to talk, it's just kind of continuing discussion. But I just think we need to speak as much as possible to each other. And I thank you so much, Gene. I thank you for your heart. And I thank you for your willingness to open up the windows of this dialogue. And my hope is that we all get some ideas. Remember this, what's in your hand? What's in your hand? Because that which is in your hand is the beginning of kind of moving out into a new understanding with each other. But take what you have and say, what do I have right around me? What call can I make now? Who can I write? What can I do to move this along? And it's the millions of those moments of those assertive moments that will lead to change in our society, I believe.
All right, great. So I guess we'll just close it up for tonight. And again, thank you everybody for being on Facebook and here on Zoom. And you know, our parting words at Ridgewood Talks is be kind and do good. So good night, everybody. Good job, buddy. Thanks.
All right.
We still have some people hanging out here.
Okay.
You're still here and you want to say something.
Yeah, you can say anything. Laura Christensen, let's see.
I think it's taking people a little time to, Hope, do you want to, okay.
Yeah, find that red button, that leave button, right?
Yeah, sometimes it takes a little while.
Okay, I'm Joe, by the way. This is my daughter's.
Hey, Joe.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I'm glad you came on.
This is the after party, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Joe's a serious talking head. Yeah, Joe is a good guy.
I liked what you were saying about the looters and rioters. And I've been talking to different people, and everyone is pontificating and saying, oh, I think the looting is terrible and the rioting is terrible, and taking this principled stand. Aside from the looters and the rioters, there's no one arguing that point.
Yeah.
There's only, everyone agrees that it's bad. And I think what you said about opportunists is really important.
Yeah.
I can understand if somebody's had a terrible time with the police, and then we see people on the street, and at the end somebody loses it and sets fire to a police car. I understand the connection between the two. I don't think it gets them where they need to be. I believe in nonviolence. And as soon as they get you to lose your cool, they've got you right where they want you to be. But I can understand a burning police car. What I don't see connected is
Target.
I'm so upset about George Floyd that I'm going to get a flat screen. The guy who's stealing, the guy who's stealing the flat screen will be stealing the flat screen if the basketball team wins.
That's right.
If there's a blackout, if they're going to find the opportunities. And when I discuss this with people, and they say, well, you know, it's all connected. I make the point that these are people who are asking me not to judge all police by the actions of a couple of policemen.
Right.
And they're doing precisely the same thing. And I think that when you talk about small things that we can do, I like metaphor. I like to hear people's discussions with people who can be reached, or discussions that you've had with people who can't be reached in front of people who are in the middle.
Yeah.
So there are the people who are never going to be reached. Their hearts are turned, and they're who they are. You're never going to get to them.
Right.
But when they post things on social media or they say things in public, you can't leave it unanswered, because if they're the only ones who are speaking, you have to present the other story. And I like to hear those little victories.
Let's see what happens.
I like to hear people tell stories about, I was having a discussion and then, you know, and I'll just wrap up really quick. You talked about jogging, and I was talking to a runner after the march in Hawthorne yesterday, and he wasn't persuaded that there's a lot of racism. He said, everybody loves, you know, Hawthorne's a great town. And I couldn't persuade him that that racism still existed. And then he was also a runner. And I said, I like to run sometimes 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock at night. If I have any insomnia, I'll go out and run in the rain at 11, 12 o'clock at night through the streets of Hawthorne. And I said, now you tell me honestly, could a black man do that? And the guy, and I felt a very small victory, because I said, as a runner, he understood how much that meant to him. Yeah. And he knew that a black man wouldn't have that freedom, that if it wasn't it might not even be our police force, but it'd be people saying there's a black man running through my neighborhood and calling the police and creating situations that I don't have to deal with. And anyway, I'd like to hear more. If you,
well, you'll hear more. Yeah, you'll hear more. I generally, that's kind of the sexy way of doing stuff. In other words, a lot of people anecdotal stuff, and there's so much anecdotal stuff that I hesitate to go there, because if we can go for hours and hours and hours telling stories. There will be opportunity. There'll be opportunity there's plenty of stories, and you know. So,
thank you for doing this, and thank you for inviting me.
So I don't know if you were watching the chat, but I put an interesting piece into the chat. It talks about James Baldwin and looting. So just take a look at it. I think it could be of interest given what you were just saying. So
Well, I don't usually use my daughter's iMac, so I wasn't able to explore. I sort of jumped on here at the last minute.
Are you talking about the James Baldwin when he says there's no evidence? Show me the evidence. That piece.
So it's I don't remember exactly the whole. It's about the essay from 1968. And, but it's like a Q&A with him. So it's he gets asked, how would you define somebody who smashes in the window of a television store and takes what he wants?
Oh, okay.
So this one, and he sort of talks about what is that about? What is that really?
Right.
What is the
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I'll take a look. Yeah, James Baldwin. I mean, he's
thank you.
Yeah.
For his time. Well, no, actually, he was of his time. Yeah. Anyone? Who else is hanging out?
Left. I'm gonna unmute everybody's here, or let you unmute yourselves, and then you can. I don't know if folks are waiting to talk or if they're just
Joanne's a resource person. She's a great resource person, and I was hoping to get to her before I spoke. But see, we have time. We have time to develop. I just kind of wanted to whet the appetite. I hope I whet the appetite to go further in. And it is a time of specifics, but I think that the real specific right now is to examine what's in your hand, to examine what do I have right now, as opposed to, should I get in a car and go to Patterson? No, don't go to Patterson. Stay home and just think about what's in your hand. Think about what is it that I have. It's actually it's a metacognitive moment for us to kind of just examine ourselves and say, well, what am I bringing to the table of this thing called life? What do I bring to the table that is a legacy to help somebody else? And now I not only want to help somebody else, just kind of selected someone else's, but now I want to really help everybody. And I want to do it intentionally. So I think that's the way to go. Who else is left? Now you're up.
Mac, hey, it's Laura Christensen. Thank you so much for doing this series. I feel so blessed. You probably don't remember me and don't know who I am, but we met probably in 1990, I don't know, 7, 8, somewhere around there. I'm really good friends with the Zeno family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I met you at AMA years and years ago. So
nice to see you. All I see is your name.
Yeah, I'm not putting my picture up. It's too late in the day, and
Okay.
I'm like,
Okay. Well, it's nice to see you,
here,
Laura.
Well, maybe I could. Here, I'll do it for a second. Maybe if I could get there. But I really.
Hey, Laura, I remember your face.
Yeah, well, new hairdo. I definitely appreciate the dialogue, and I've been. I posted earlier, I've been having gut-wrenching conversations with my 27-year-old daughter, Erica, and Dana became best friends in kindergarten. So my daughter's in Texas right now. So she's having a hard time with everything that's going on in Texas. She has a 3-year-old daughter. And so she's starting to have the conversations about the injustices in the world and what have you at a 3-year-old level, but I'm very proud of her. And I finally, like Kathy and I have been going back and forth over the last couple of weeks trying to connect, and I connected with her. I was hoping she'd join us. She'll join us for some of them, I hope, but this series. So I really appreciate it. And I am challenging any white person I come in contact with about getting educated.
You know what? Can I tell you that I was going to say there are going to be any number of well-meaning people who want to reach across the aisle and find a Black person to speak to, right? And it's a well-meaning thing to do. I think that what you just said really is the secret. You start where you are. Right. And there are enough attitudes that need to be teased out that if you never see another Black person, you can still be an agent for change.
Absolutely.
And right where you are, you can absolutely say, hey, listen, what was it? Who was it that said, I don't know what I don't know? If you start there and begin to want to know more, then it's going to change your presentation. It's going to change what your knowledge base is going to change your conversation. It's going to mean that you include in your conversation an understanding of things that maybe you didn't know before, right? And that will change someone. By the way, that will change someone whether you mean to change them or not, right? So it's almost like, you know, when you're dating, and you talk to, and I talk to a girl. So let's say I'm talking to a girl, I'm dating her. And then she just talks, just regular talk, but she knows about this, and she knows about that, and she knows about this, and she knows about that. I'm like, wow, she knows a lot of stuff. Now, I may not say to her, hey, you know a lot of stuff, but I'm affected by that, right? And so it is in our friendships, in our daily banter. When you are, quote unquote, woke, people know it.
Right.
You know?
And I mean, in the last 2 weeks, I have shared stories upon stories upon stories that I've heard at the Zeno table, you know, on our Sunday dinners or whatever. And I was appalled at the time when I heard them, and I'm more appalled now. And just waking up some people that are in my circle that have been so oblivious to this, you know, and even, you know, challenging people. I'm like, okay, you know, Kathy is an affluent American, you know, woman, you know, African American woman in Ridgewood, and we'll go out and people are talking to me when she's asking questions. You know, that's just wrong.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
and you know, oh, that doesn't happen. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And I would throw out there too, for white people to unpack racism is very difficult.
Yes.
You know, I've done this a really long time, and I speak from experience because you get, and that's, I process information. So, yeah, but you have to take the information and work it, because it's sometimes not things that we think about, and the struggle to understand how we're racist, what does privilege mean? Even those two words, we don't really even use them properly anymore.
Absolutely.
But in my own journey to go, you know, which is decades now of what is racism? Where do I fall in that loop? What do I have to change? What do I have to see? And now so much of it's by rote, but it was a journey to really, when I, you know, when you look at things, what's missing? When you look at media, what's missing? Who's missing? Whose faces don't you see? You know, I imagine, what if TV was all, and I pick something. What if, you know, the TV was all Asian people? How would I feel as a white person? If it was all African American people, how would I feel? And then that helps me understand what people see all the time, because everything is white.
And let me say something. You know, how many friends have I said, who I see when they said, I went to this party and I was the only white girl. I went to this party, I was the only white.
I've done that.
Yeah,
Right.
like
I have been that person too. So
Right. It's like I'm saying, welcome to life.
right. So I have, well, an extensive part of my family is African American. The other extensive part is Latino. And so we took a birthday party picture, and then one of my colleagues from seminary, also an African American woman, said, I saw that picture and you're the lightest person in the picture. Right in the middle with this blonde hair and white skin and this peach top among all these beautiful colors of my family and my niece and the father and the families. So, yeah, so.
And it comes down to such an extended part of my family is Italian American. So, you know, you know, when we were aligned, you know, it was always a cultural differential, right? But we were a family when we were, and it was this, you know, this kind of, you know, interesting dichotomy of being within the family, and then how society is looking at it. So it's always very, very interesting, right? When you are blended, right? The kinds of things that you think about that you might not normally think about, you know. So yeah, I'm with you, Joanne.
Yeah. Did you find that it took a long time to get a comfort level, that you intellectually, you know where you want to be and you know what's in your heart, But when you're dealing with a group of people that you haven't dealt with extensively, spending time with them, did you find that it took some time and there's...
Well, okay, so I talked about dichotomy. In this case, these were very conservative state folks and staunchly and diametrically opposed to my politics. But they were the most wonderful folks. Right? And so I just said, hey, you know, I'm going to make love rule. But there were, you know, it was talking about cognitive dissonance. My goodness, you know, it was interesting. Yeah. And so the same. I remember, one guy says, okay, well, I know, he came. I was living in Lodi at the time. He says, when they have the San Gennaro Festival, I believe, he would go up to the Italian delis, and he was such a happy person, and. But then when it was King's birthday, he says, well, what should we do? What should we do? And, he was actually well-intentioned. And so there was all this education that we had to do with each other to understand each other. And these are the kinds of things, the kind of painful learnings that we need to do.
I think it's only time that lets you, it's only time with people. You have to spend time with people to get a comfort level.
That's
and
right.
I find if I find somebody who's homophobic, almost invariably they don't know any gay people.
Right.
And
Well, they don't think they know.
If somebody's, they think they know about them, but
Right.
they don't know, they haven't spent time.
Yeah.
And the same thing, my daughter chose her dance school, the Effusion Dance Collective, and it's run by two women who went to Alvin Ailey.
Yeah.
And they're amazing dancers. And they had opened up in Hawthorne, and my daughter was 5 and saw through the window the ballet class, and she wanted to go in. So we took her in, and she said, she asked me, can I do this? And I said, yes. And of course, this was a school that was in Patterson, and there were no white students. And they were trying to survive in Hawthorne. So when my daughter came in, she's welcomed. Of course, they're like, oh yes, absolutely terrific. And the next brochure that came out had her on the front cover of the brochure. And they had a daddy's dance. And I grew up in Bergenfield. I had no black friends. I went to a Catholic school. There were no black people in my Catholic school. In my high school, in DePaul High School, one black student, and he wasn't in my grade.
That's when Bergenfield was white.
Yeah, now I
remember.
So
I went to Hackensack High. I remember. We played you guys.
The few black people that I knew in my life I was close with, but I didn't really spend that much time. So now I'm in the daddy dance, and there's 15 guys, and they're all black, and the teacher's black, and we've got to dance, and we have to go up at the intermission and do a dance at the recital, and we're going to work at it for 6 weeks, and it's hip hop. And this is not what you expect with hip hop. And so I'm trying not to hit every stereotype that you would expect of the white guy who can't dance. And I got to admit, I was really uncomfortable at first because I wanted to, I feel this desperate need to say, like, I'm one of the good ones. And I hear myself saying, oh, my black friend that I had. It's like, oh, Jesus.
And guess what? You got a standing ovation at the end.
No, we all did. But I know, but I mean, I got past it, and I have friends, and it was such a great experience. And I mean, my heart was open, and I didn't have any, I don't think, everyone has racism. Everyone has preconceived ideas. I didn't have anything in my heart that had to be cleaned up. But that comfort level that I got from spending time was invaluable. And that's a really important thing, that you can't go out and seek somebody and say, I need to find a black person to relate to. But when you have opportunities, you've got to take advantage of them and just say, here's a chance to talk to somebody who's not somebody that I normally talk to.
And one of the things that you learn if you're a minority, anything, immigrant minority, whatever your minority, is that when you're in a place with quote unquote strangers, the one thing that you can be, that you own, is yourself. And if you can just be yourself, then people will see that. If you're not trying to put on the air, if you're not trying to be some, stereotypical idea of what, you think that they would expect. If you're just yourself, people will welcome you. And I'm sure your hip hop dance was really good.
culturally, a lot of Irish people, or people that in my soul, were terribly afraid of embarrassment. We're terrified of saying the wrong thing, and that terror that it makes you. As soon you get uncomfortable and you start to say, they can see that I'm uncomfortable, and you get more uncomfortable.
That's right.
And and the only thing that fixes that is time.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Is this it? Oh, I got the 5 of you?
Did I kill this?
Is that it? Just the 5?
The hanger
Yeah,
on.
I think that's it. I think we're ready to call it a day. Anastasia, Susan, do you have anything? Juan, you guys want to say anything? I think you're unmuted.
I think sometimes people walk away from their device.
Yeah, that's true.
Or they're dark. Because they're not necessarily there.
Well, and Zoom etiquette tells the hosts, you really have to stay until everybody's done. So I don't know if they're not there, but.
No, so I think we can assume.
I think we can assume. It was a great night. Thank you.
It was great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you again.
Thank you for organizing this. I'm looking
Yes.
forward to the series.
We'll see you next week, you guys. Thanks
All
again.
right.
All right,
Bye.
take care.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.